What's good with it in the hood with it? Welcome back to the Collective Clips. And you already know, we get it in, right? But before I tell this scary story, this paranormal story, this true story, right? I need you guys to hit that like and subscribe button, put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content I'm kicking. And let's get straight to this story. So, Chico, California, right? It's known as more so a party town because of Chico State. You know, you have Chico State. It's a small town located in Northern California. And what you have there is a lot of youth, a lot of people that are just starting their lives out. They're going to the Chico State University. And that's pretty much what that town is known for, man. It's not a very big community, but it is a very tight-knit community. So everybody pretty much knows everybody. I know, over the years, just like what's happened to every community in California or in the United States, man, the meth epidemic, the fentanyl epidemic has plagued everybody, man, and has become one of those areas that's basically plagued by meth and a whole lot of crime. But I have a history with Chico, California, based on that. I have family, and my family reunion is actually held in Orville, man. I have a Theo that moved out to Orville. He's now passed. But he bought a lot of property out there. It's more country than anything. But he bought a lot of acres of land. And I remember as a young kid, we used to go out there with the family, and there was a river that ran through his property, man. We used to have a rope tied up on a tree and go do the camping out there. Family would go out there for a week. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I just remember, man, over the years getting older, less and less family started to show up. And so it became a situation where nobody went out there anymore as much. But every once in a while, the family does get together and go out to Orville. And Chico is not far from Orville. So we usually go into Chico to kick it, to party. Because a lot of us that were kids and enjoyed the camping aspect, enjoyed the river, grew up. So now it's more about clubs and partying and whatever, getting higher, whatever you choose to do. So anyways, the story I wanted to tell centers around two cities, man. Chico and Red Bluff. Now, there was a girl. They actually made a documentary as well as a movie and an Unsolved Mysteries episode about her named Colleen Stan. And she was known as the girl in the box, right? And the reason she was known as the girl in the box, or that's what they called this movie, was because she was kidnapped. She was kidnapped while she was hitchhiking by a couple, man. The couple that kidnapped her was Janice and Cameron Hooker. Okay? And this was a husband and wife. The wife was very young when she married this guy. And this guy was sadistic, man. He was a psycho, basically. He was into some crazy stuff, right? So what he was into was basically, doing bad things to women necessarily that they didn't want done to them. And he used to kidnap them. So, this girl, Colleen Stan, was actually kidnapped and held captive for 7 to 8 years. And there was a box that he had created, right, which was a metal and a brown wood box that he cut holes into and put all these latches and things on. And it had styrofoam and a soft material inside of this box. And he would place this on this girl's head and it would muffle her screams. Because the one thing that this guy liked was he liked torturing these women. He liked doing bad things, but he didn't like to hear them scream out. He wanted them to stay silent while he did what he did. Like I said, a sadistic, sick individual. But at the same time, his wife, albeit she was young, so she agreed to some of the things he did and she kind of just let him do it. I think she more so did it out of fear rather than doing it, because she enjoyed it. But, when a woman is that attached to a man and he's doing these weird things, there's going to be cases where the woman is so shocked. She's living in shock. She's living in fear. She doesn't really speak up. So this girl, Colleen, the cold part about this situation was this girl, Colleen, was kept in a box that was made with a box on her head while she wasn't, participating in whatever this guy wanted. And she was living under his waterbed. He had made this box, a homemade box out of wood, and he placed it under his waterbed. Now, a lot of you guys don't know what waterbeds are. In the 80s, man, early 90s, kind of when they went out of style. I used to have one, man, which was a waterbed, which was a big frame box that had like a bed, I guess, and it was filled with water. And I remember waterbeds were very comfortable. A lot of people had them. They were very popular in the 80s and early 90s. But somewhere along the line, they would spring leaks, man. There was a lot of instances where people's whole houses were flooded because of these water beds. They actually had water in them. It was a rubber mattress with water filled in it. Anyways, he developed a box and he would keep this girl under his box for 7 to 8 years, man. He continuously did bad things to this woman. It got to a point where you say to yourself, why didn't she find the courage to leave? Why didn't she escape? And, this guy was on it. He would take her down to the basement. He had several, devices down there and things that he would do to her. And she kind of just, when she was questioned, because she ultimately did get away, man. The wife actually did help her to escape this guy. The wife had a change of heart. And we're gonna get to all that. The story gets a little trippy. It's real crazy, right? And I remember hearing this story, man, because I have a lot of family, like I said, out there from the Chico and Orville area. So they had told me this story. It's an actually ongoing investigation, and we're gonna get to the intricacies of it. So, anyways, this girl lived like this, and she said she used to get out of her head, meaning she would think about other things. She got so used to what he did and what he was doing to her. It was crazy. Now, how was she kidnapped is the question. She was actually hitchhiking from California to Oregon. She was on her way. She was going to surprise a friend. It was a friend's birthday. She instead, back in them days, hitchhiking was pretty common. A lot of people did it. It isn't like it is now where kids can't even play outside and you don't see hitchhikers on the road. Back in them days, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, you seen hitchhikers all the time. Every time you went down the freeway, there was hitchhikers. I remember my father used to pick them up, and I used to trip out as a little kid, kind of hesitate to some of these guys he used to pick up. But my dad never picked up women or anything like that because he didn't want to get caught up in a situation. But he used to pick up men and give them rides. Hey, take me to the gas station, take me over here, whatever. So anyways, she was hitchhiking. That's when this couple pulled up to her. Back in them days, people were more free spirits. They were trusting. Wasn't a lot of the crime and the drugs that go on now were going on back then. So people would be quick to jump in your car. I remember these are back in the days when people left their doors unlocked, their doors wide open with just a screen door until home invasions started to happen and people started to kick your door down. That's when people's attitudes changed. Society changed and people changed their mentality. So anyways, this girl, that's how she was abducted, man. She's seen a wife and a husband, and she felt at ease. He made her feel comfortable. Of course, as soon as she got in the car, he took her to where he lived, which was in Red Bluff, right? That's further up north, Northern California. And he had a home that was away from everyone. Of course, he placed this box on her head so it would muffle her screams. And she lived there for 8 years, going through a lot of the turmoil. So let's get to the paranormal part. So maybe I would say the mid 80s, or no, actually it was 1990. There was a woman named Jodie Foster, and her name rings out because she actually has the same name as the actress, Jodie Foster, that was in, of course, Silence of the Lambs and several other movies, The Accused. And anyways, this woman was a single mother. She had a 3-year-old daughter. So it was just her and her daughter, and she actually moved to Chico. She was from Southern California, from Orange County. She was getting away from that, got a good job, so she moved to Chico, which was much smaller and slower paced than Orange County, right? So as she moves to Chico, she gets an apartment, and it was apartment 14. And so she gets this apartment. Now, you got to understand, prior to this point, her and her daughter have never experienced anything paranormal. For those of you that don't believe in the paranormal, I guess this video ain't for you. I'm a true believer because I've went through some shit, and I've told stories about it. So I believe in ghosts and goblins and things of that nature, man. I'm not a skeptic, right? Because, once you've lived through experiences and you've experienced some crazy stuff, then I can't deny other people's stories. I'll question them, but I won't deny them. So anyways, this woman, she moves into this apartment with her daughter. And I'd say about a month into living in this apartment, she starts to notice little things, misplaced. She starts to notice cabinet doors opening and doors closing when they shouldn't. And, we've seen movies like the Amityville Horror. We've seen a lot of these paranormal shows. And this is always the case, right? Where people think that there's a ghost or a spirit in the home or even a demon because they're seeing things. And sometimes, when you're living by yourself, you're a little bit paranoid. You're real, your anxiety can be way up because you're living alone, especially a mother with a child. I know it wasn't as bad back in them days, but there still was things that were going on. So, maybe she thought she was just seeing things. Anyways, one day she's in the living room doing whatever she's doing, and she hears her young daughter say, hi. So she kind of thinks her daughter's playing with an imaginary friend or whatever. So she tells her daughter, who are you talking to? And her daughter says, I'm talking to my Liz. My Liz, right? So she thinks, okay, maybe her daughter's bored. She's alone. She's a little girl. Maybe she developed a little friend, a doll that she's calling my Liz. So anyway, she goes on about her life. And a couple weeks later, she starts to notice a lot more paranormal activity to the point where she can't deny it anymore. Something's going on. So she actually gets at a maintenance man that's actually working in the area, and she tells him, hey, I'm experiencing some crazy stuff. So he goes in and he sees it. He actually sees cabinet doors opening, lights flickering, things that we usually see or hear about in these stories. He gets to witness it, and him and her and the kid, they get on. They get on, right? So this guy ends up telling her a story about a woman that was kidnapped, that actually lived in that apartment years, maybe 15 years before her, and the woman was never seen. Okay? So she starts to do her research. Meanwhile, while she's doing her research, because she's moved. She lived there for exactly 3 months and said, you know what? I'm gone. I'm going to avoid this situation. This is crazy. Because like I said, she had never experienced anything like this. So she moves, but she starts to have these dreams. And in these dreams, she sees a young woman basically being tortured. A young woman, and she sees a couple, a husband and a wife, doing bad things to this woman. And prior to this, she had never had any dreams like this. She had never seen this woman, didn't know who this woman was, but these dreams seemed so real. It was like this woman in this dream was trying to tell her something. So anyway, she starts to do her research on it, and come to find out there was a girl that was abducted in Chico, 15 years prior to her living in that apartment, that actually lived in that apartment, and her name was Marliz, okay? Her name was Marliz Spanicky. And it's crazy that her daughter was talking to someone, because she thought immediately when she heard this girl's name, Marliz, about her daughter saying my Liz, So believe what you will, To me, this was a situation where I believed this was a lost soul or someone trying to cry out to this woman. Now, not everybody sees these types of things. So not everyone's, there's a lot of people that are skeptics. They don't believe in it, but she started to believe, so she started to have these dreams again. She wasn't putting two and two together with these dreams and what she had experienced. She thought it was odd that her daughter was talking to this girl, my Liz, and that this girl's name was Marliz, but it could have been a coincidence, right? So the dream started to get more in depth. The dream started to get more detailed to where there was a number that kept coming up, more like a coordinate. So again, she went to the authorities, man. She said, I'm having these dreams. Of course, skepticism is real. They're like, you know what? I don't know. Yes, there was a girl that went missing from the exact same apartment, but I mean, you're talking about ghosts and shit here, girl. Let it go. So she lets it go. She moves on with her life or whatever, right? Years later, this woman, Janice Cameron, goes to a church, a Catholic church, and she tells a priest that she needs to make a confession. So he sits down with her, and she starts telling him the story about her husband, and that they had a girl kidnapped, and that she wants to let this girl go, and she's conflicted, and the only reason that she's feeling this way now, where she wants to come out and express it to someone, is because she's scared. She's seen him do odd things to women before, and he pretty much threatened her and told her, if she didn't get with the program, she would be next. So, being that he's threatening her now, and she feels like, he's losing it. He's becoming more entrenched in what he's doing, these devious behavior and these tactics, that he might do something to her, right? So of course, she's telling the priest, because the priest can't alert authorities. Eventually he convinces her to go to the authorities. Now, in the meantime, she lets this girl Colleen go, and it's national news. It's a big deal, because this girl was missing. Her family was looking for her for 7 to 8 years. And she starts to tell this crazy story about a couple that abducted her, how the woman was actually nice to her and didn't do too much bad things to her. But this guy, did all these different things to her and kept her sleeping, basically 23 hours out of the day while he was at work or while he was living his life. She was placed in a box with a box over her head under his waterbed. And she lived like this for years, man. One could only imagine. Well, the wife actually tells another story about another girl that he abducted years before he abducted Colleen, right? And this girl he abducted, name was Marliz Spanicky, okay? And this girl didn't make it, like Colleen. She wasn't as lucky. You know, when he kidnapped her, what had happened was, I guess, you know, she was young. She was about, I believe, 19 or 20 years old, 18 or 19 years old, and she was walking from a flea market. Her and her boyfriend had just got in an argument in a flea market. Now, this girl had just moved into Chico. She hadn't lived there longer than two months, and she had moved and was trying to become an actress. Her ultimate goal was to go to Hollywood and do all that. So she ends up living in the small town of Chico with her sister and her family. Actually, she had her own little place, which was apartment 14, right? And she gets into an argument with her boyfriend, and she takes off walking. So she's a little bit upset. Well, this couple pulls up next to her in a bluish gray car, and she sees a husband and wife, and they ask her if she needs a ride. Of course, she's upset. She wants someone to talk to. She sees a young woman. She feels it's safe. So she gets in this car, and immediately, she gets threatened with a knife and told to lay down, gets this box put over her head, and gets taken out to Red Bluff, where she's, of course, kidnapped. Now, this was the first time that the wife said that the husband had ever did anything like this. She knew that he was searching for a girl, and he wanted a girl that didn't have a lot of ties to the community. Being that this girl, he got lucky, I guess you would say, that she had just moved into town, didn't know too many people besides her boyfriend and her sister who lived in that area. So she didn't have a lot of ties in the community. There wouldn't be a lot of people looking for her rather than just a couple. And he didn't know this at the time, but it just happened to fall into his lap, literally. So then he takes her and he chains her up in this basement, where he starts to do bad things to her. But again, like I said in the beginning of this spiel, he doesn't like to hear women scream, right? So he devises a plan. He read about, in a book about that if you cut a person's vocal cords, they'll still be able to live and suffer through the pain, yet they won't be able to scream out. So he tries to do it himself to this woman. And man, it's probably a horrible experience, right? And he doesn't know what he's doing. He goes too deep. So basically she bleeds out, and while she's bleeding, he decides to strangle her or whatever. And that's it. So him and the wife take this girl out, Marliz, and bury her out somewhere out towards in Red Bluff, out in the country. And she was never seen again. She was abducted and just missing. Now, years later, when this woman moves into her apartment, she starts to have this paranormal activity going on, She believes to this day it to be the ghost of Marliz crying out to her, trying to explain to her what happened. Now, of course, this woman, Janice Hooker, and Colleen tell a story, about what he did to Colleen, for so many years. And she actually says that, yes, he did abduct Marliz and he did unalive her and he did bury her. And she takes these authorities to go look for the body, but she can't remember. So for several years, they're searching. Meanwhile, at the same time, this woman, Jodie Foster, who was having all these premonitions and these dreams, is speaking to authorities, and she actually gets in contact with the detective that's actually really looking, into this case, and starts to give him coordinates. The cold part about the situation was the coordinates she gave him that she got in her dream, that the numbers she kept seeing was the exact same area that Janice Hooker had said they placed the body. So, of course, Janice Hooker gets immunity and she's willing to testify against her husband. Now, they can't get her husband for this case because there's no body, no case, right? It's all hearsay. Again, this detective knows that he did it. Everybody pretty much knows in the community that he did it, but they can't charge him for it. So they basically charge him for the kidnapping and torture of the other girl, Colleen Stan. So it's a big trial, and he ends up ultimately going to trial. His wife testifies against him. Colleen goes on stand, tells him everything she went through. And they know what type of individual he is. So he ends up catching over 100 years. Okay. Now, of course, just because you get this much time doesn't mean you do all that time. Again, it's an ongoing investigation where they're looking for this body so they can get him for life without. But they can't seem to find the body. This girl, now Jodie has stopped having these dreams. Every once in a while, she still has them. This detective is actively still a cold case. They're actively searching for this body so they can pin it on this guy. Even though the wife admitted to it and said that her and her husband did this, they still need a body for proof, or he can be tried and acquitted, and then you can't do double jeopardy. You can't retry him. So it's a case where, this guy kind of got away with this for now. So he ends up in 2021 getting moved from prison to a mental facility where they're going to, he's going to sit there for the next few years, and they're going to check his mental capacity and make sure that he's able to go out to the public. Now, I asked myself, well, he just got 100 years. Why? But a lot of these crimes were ran concurrent rather than consecutive. So albeit he got 100 years with all the crimes stacked on top of each other, it came out to way less. Plus, he got caught up in a time when he did 50% of his time. So it seems about right, the timeline. So anyways, this guy's sitting in a mental facility right now being evaluated to get out. Meanwhile, the detectives are still looking. The crazy part of this story is, the paranormal part. For people that don't believe that souls cry out from the dead, it seems like a lot of people that go missing, or a lot of people that get killed behind some, crazy circumstances, it's like their soul is in limbo. Because I don't know about you, but we all have a body. And if you can't feel your soul inside your body, then I don't know who the fuck you are, right? But there's an energy, a soul that's inside each one of our bodies, man, that keeps us going, that wakes up every morning. And our body's just a shell. And eventually our body, succumbs to diseases or just life in general or old age, and it goes. But the soul stays alive. The soul's your energy. So I believe that her soul was displaced, and she went back to the last place that she remembers, which was her apartment. And like I said, some people are more susceptible to others to seeing paranormal stuff. And she reached out to this woman and her daughter, and they seen her, or the daughter did, and the woman, actually dreamt about her. It's just a trippy story, man. Being that, I know that area quite well, having family, like I said, from Oroville, Chico area. It's just a story, man, a crazy story I wanted to tell. So anyways, with that being said, it's an ongoing case. You can look it up for yourself. It's called The Girl in the Box. Like I said, they made a movie about it. It's also an Unsolved Mysteries episode. I thought it was, something to speak on, something that I haven't seen here on YouTube. And it's a scary story. Definitely tragic, crazy, and weird all at the same time. With that being said, I hope that you move smooth with a purpose. Get everything that you want coming. And remember, at the end of the day, man, my only goal here is to provide the best possible content I can on YouTube, and to bring people together with an understanding, man, that, there's a lot going on out there, man, and you have to stay aware in life, and do the best you can for yourself. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive and struggle and strive for what I truly believe in, and that's bringing you bomb content. If there's any other stories you want me to touch on, or things that you want me to speak on, man, let me know. I'm open and susceptible to whatever ideas you might have. Leave a comment. This is The Gun. Bang, bang.